and thank you, Erin. It's great to be here with you today. And I'm excited about some of the things we'll cover. Here's our learning areas for the day. So basically learning a few things here. We're going to throw a lot of information at you, so don't worry if it all doesn't land. Some of it may not be for you, or some of it you may want to come back to later. But I would suggest just having a piece of scratch paper by you, just to note down anything you do like, or anything you want to follow up with, anything you want to remember. And then we'll be sending you links to everything we're doing today, including a resource list, including a note sheet about what you might have, what you might take from this workshop today. And all of these areas we'll cover. So just keep in mind, you know, it doesn't all have to land in this hour, and there'll be time. And if you do have questions, you can always follow up with us too afterwards if questions don't get answered. So the other piece here is just to keep in mind, many of you here work in the field of healthcare, help others, but this is also applicable to helping yourself and helping friends, helping family, so you can apply it in many ways. So a couple of these things here I've already said, but just to keep in mind, you know, with any stress management, we need to practice these things afterwards, or it's not enough just to read about them or listen to them. There's actually the invitation to do them regularly to make a difference in our stress levels. So you'll be getting all of the slides and the resource list with continued practices. I have a course on my website, the 4 Steps to De-Stress. So there's going to be a lot of stuff you can follow up on here and continue to use. And coming here today is a first wonderful step, because that is active coping. Our first instinct is usually to avoid stress, but leaning into it, like coming to an anxiety webinar, is active coping. So good for you, and you're already on the right foot here. So, of course, we're doing this in response partly to the coronavirus global pandemic that is now happening, impacting all of us, impacting people in different ways. So how we usually cope, many of the things we usually use here aren't available. So that puts an extra stress on us, besides the event itself, okay? There's no end to this right now. We don't know how it's going to turn out. That creates extended stress and has the potential to go into what we call chronic stress. There's acute stress, which is more short-term, like say shopping for, you know, holiday gifts or something. But then something like this that's going into months, that is getting into the area of chronic stress, which takes more of a toll on our health. So it's actually, you know, really important to be doing as much as we can to handle our stress. You know, you see people walking more. This is great. You know, there's all these online offerings of yoga or of dance. I even talked to a client this morning who said his dojo martial arts is doing virtual lessons. So even though the usual things aren't there, hopefully there's other options for us. But what we can see is there's just a lot of ups and downs in this COVID pressure cooker, okay? One of the things we might start to do is just notice, how do we respond to this? What are our usual sort of flavors of response? The main 3 stress responses, we might call them depression, frustration, or anxiety, okay? And anxiety is what we'll be focusing on today, but they're definitely related, and you can see yourself trying different responses at different times, or going down different paths at different times. But how does it look? It's different for everyone, but you know, we have the kind of stereotype where it's, you know, high anxiety, right? But it can also be that you just feel off, or you feel distracted. I have a friend who said, you know, a friend had called and asked her to call back and needed support, and she just kind of, oh, la, 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 and just realized that's a sign of her anxiety, is to be distracted or feel disconnected. So learning what our own particular, you know, styles are now is good to watch, or can be something we learn here. But just to know, anxiety is pretty normal right now. Higher stress levels would be a normal thing. And your work, you know, I'm speaking to the patient navigators, but all of us now are being asked to take care of ourselves, to stay strong, to do what we can to keep our immune systems resilient. So self-care, stress management is a key piece for everyone. And especially if you're helping others or if you're in a high stress frontline position. It's the old oxygen mask idea, forgive the cliche, but it is very applicable now. And helpers are often more sensitive. Many people are more sensitive. So you're going to pick up the stress from the environment. You could be picking up the global pandemic stress for all we know, right? So again, we're going to go into what might be helpful for others, but the first step is helping yourself and keeping yourself managing that stress. That might mean at the end of the day, you do some stress releasing. I just had a client this morning and we did an experiential exercise, and she said, oh my gosh, I kind of forget to release stress. Yes, it can be as simple as exhaling, and we use images to help and to sort of superpower that release part. So we'll be doing some of these experiential exercises. But making your stress management is a priority now. That can be one of the opportunities of this time, is to see where it works, where it doesn't, where you need to tweak it, what you need to add. And remembering, for any crisis, there's that great Japanese word. It says, yes, there's danger, but there's also opportunity with any crisis. So the danger here might be not keeping strong enough to avoid this, overworking, or extending yourself into depletion, right? But the opportunity might be to totally revamp and upgrade your stress management. In terms of anxiety, let's talk about what is anxiety, what is normal. And here's a little infographic, and this is from the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. This is in your resources too. But we see there's some normal levels of everyday anxiety we all experience here. Anxiety is a normal emotional response that addresses the question or the fear that something awful might happen. So we see right now that is actually true, okay? So this is a normal response. And just to be clear about that, and the level of higher anxiety where it gets into the anxiety disorder zone, if that's happening, that would be benefit from therapy and medication combined. But it is treatable. But most of us now are just dealing with that kind of everyday anxiety. So again, the helpful part of this is anxiety has helped us survive. The fight, flight, freeze response, or the FFF, it has helped humans be here now, right? But the thing is, you know, that's the helpful side. The unhelpful side is if it keeps looping around and building on itself, and we're worrying about stuff we can't control. So we're going to look at tools for a lot of the ways to manage anxiety when it isn't helpful. So again, this is just the normal stuff. Tools we're going to practice, upgrading stress management, that's something that is a lifelong practice in my book, and anything you do along these lines are a win-win and will stand you in a supportive way for the rest of your life. So there's nothing to lose in that. But one of the things you can do here with checking in with your own anxiety is rate your stress on a level of 1 to 10, with 10 being high. So let's do that right now. How anxious or how stressed are you right at this moment? What number would you give it? You can use half, you know, 6.5, 8.5, whatever. You can use halves and get your number. And what I'd like to do now is just a little mindfulness around emotion exercise. Most of the time, emotions, they'll go through in about 30 or 60 seconds and be gone, be done. But when we resist them, or when we feel like it's not a good thing, or we're sort of resisting, pushing against them, trying to avoid them, trying to repress them, that can be like trying to keep a beach ball underwater. And if you're really focused on it, it's working, but as soon as you turn away, boom, it comes up. So let's try a mindfulness exercise with emotions. All right, so this is very simple, and we're going to do it in like a minute. It's called the RAIN acronym. So just sit comfortably in your chair and invite in your anxiety. And the first step of RAIN is to just recognize it. So whether it's stress or anxiety, you can kind of close your eyes and just say, hello, I'm anxious. I've got some anxiety. And the A is accepting. Okay, I have anxiety. That's pretty normal, sounds like. And a higher stress level might be normal too. And this is happening. That's okay, right? That's part of the deal right now. And then the third step is the I. This is investigating your anxiety. Again, we're all different in terms of how it shows up for us. But first of all, just take a breath and see where you feel your anxiety in your own body. Usually it's somewhere in the torso, might be in the gut. But if you notice it, just put your hand on there. And then just see, see if there's anything else you notice if you were to label this emotion. Is it hot or cold? Is it a certain color, or is it a certain texture? Just noticing. Anything at all you get about this while we're allowing it to, allowing ourselves to be with it in this way. There's a little more neutrality. It's not running us over. We're just sort of saying, hey, tell me a little more about yourself. What's your worry right now? And let's ask that, or let's invite that, is if anxiety were to be saying something or warning you of something, what would that be? If it had a movement or a sound or a posture. Sometimes we can even say, if this were a character, an inner side of me, nervous Nellie or something, or Antsy Nancy, we might be able to name it and then have a little better way of working with it. And then, so that's the investigation. And then the N is just not identifying with it. So we have anxiety, but we are not anxiety. So that's just an emotional mindfulness exercise. And again, you'll have a link to that in your resources. But sometimes it gives us a little more information about the concern behind the emotion. And basically, they're trying to keep us safe, trying to keep us alert to any potential issues or threats. So again, the good news here is we have a new opportunity to try some different things, whether they be an online martial art class or Zumba or whatever. But asking yourself some questions about your stress management. I know for myself, as soon as this happened, I just realized, hey, you got to get serious about meditation. I was a little intermittent, but now it's like every morning without fail, as much as humanly possible, right? So there can be some good questions to ask yourself about where your self-care fits in to the to-do list. What is one next step you can do here? Also checking in with patients, a lot of those things that we can't do now, we miss them. So I came up with this exercise of a miss list, and writing down the things you miss, and then coming up with 3 alternatives. So again, for me, it was swimming. I didn't even realize how much I love swimming. I just go once a week or less. But when I realized I couldn't do it, I was very, So I thought of 3 things I could do instead. Well, I was taking a lot of baths. The sound of the creek could be very helpful for this water need, right? And then later, like a week later, I thought, oh, there's a movement sequence where you sort of do breaststroke on the floor. Maybe that would help. I mean, we need to get a little creative and maybe even wacky sometimes to come up with these alternatives. So you can do this for yourself and for clients. Come up with a miss list, 3 alternatives for each thing you miss. And then let's try another body-based tool here. So this is called havening, self-havening, and it's a very simple body-based tool. All it involves is touching and kind of stroking different parts of your body, and there's incredible results people are getting from this. They call it a new psychosensory tool. And it's even been shown to reduce trauma or relieve or clear trauma. So this little thing can have a lot of impact. But right now, let's just try it. So the first position, there's about 3 or 4 movements. Put your arms over your chest and across, and your hands would be on the top of your shoulders here. And then just stroke down gently. You can do as much pressure as the type of speed that feels good to you. So again, a body-based tool for anxiety. It's not going to change what we can't control, but it is impacting us perhaps. See if you notice anything. That's the first movement. And then the second movement is putting your hands, your fingertips on your forehead and just stroking to your temples. Now, if you're ever doing a body-based tool and you notice, like I just did, that my breath goes, goes deeper, that's a sign that this is working. And again, they may be subtle signs here, but just give this a try. The final movement, just under your eyes. So from the bridge of your nose, using your fingertips to just stroke under your eyes to your temples. And this is called self-havening. Again, there's resources in your resource list for this. And you can keep doing this if you like. Because again, we're in a Zoom meeting. Nobody can see you. You could be doing martial arts for all we know, okay? But again, this can be something you do if you're feeling really stressed at the end of a shift or just needing a little comfort. Some people are using the weighted blankets, so that's kind of a similar helpful tool. All right, and then looking at ideas for helping others with their anxiety. So just a reminder of the patient navigator training and boundaries. You know, we're all sometimes fixers at heart, but that is not your responsibility, is to fix the whole situation that you get faced with. But being a warm and caring person counts for a lot. So don't take that for granted. Listening, just hearing people, being a safe person to connect with, whether it's telehealth or in person, that's huge. The other piece that I was taught in my supervision was don't assume the worst. You know, ask what it means to them. There are a lot of times when you hear something that's happening and you think, oh no, that sounds terrible. But when you ask the patient, they say, no, I was kind of ready for this or expecting this, or I've dealt with stuff like this before, not a big deal. And you're like, oh, okay. So ask them how it's impacting them. What does this mean to you? How are you experiencing this? What are some, you know, things that hit you about this? But just receiving and reflecting is huge. Being able to say, so that sounds like this is a huge challenge for you. And again, letting them share. So in motivational interviewing, some of these tools you'll recognize if you've done some of that training, but reflections are just such a huge piece. Normalizing is a big piece. How are they looking at this? What is the framework they're holding? Is that supporting them? How much news are they watching, right? So these are the things that may be helpful. And don't forget, you can still focus a session. We don't want to, you know, not attend to what the coronavirus, how that's impacting people, but we can still say and set an agenda and say, I'd like to hear how you're doing with all this that's going on. And then I'd also love to keep our work going in the area of your diet and diabetes. How does that sound? You know, get their buy-in. And you're the timekeeper. So you're the one that may say, okay, watching the time, Janet, I think it's maybe a good time for us to transition back to our usual focus. So, and then just having some helpful statements or questions you might use can also be useful here. So remembering the focusing skills, another skill that can be helpful is reminding people, what about your past resilience? What have been ways that you have dealt with challenges? What did you learn from that? What did you learn about yourself that surprised you? And then gathering stories of resilience, nature, animals, clients. I don't know if a lot of you remember the 2013 flood, but that's what a lot of things I hear is people remember, oh, that was a big deal, you know. That was even more traumatic sometimes. So these can be different things that may be helpful for others. So keeping that in mind, one thing I just caution is don't go for the word gift too soon. Oh, what's the gift of this? People may not be there yet. So just watch what words work best for asking if there were a positive side to this, what might that be? You also may find people who are doing really great now. Introverts kind of love this. We're usually a mix of introvert and extrovert, but you know, there may be people that are thriving now and want to keep some of what's happening now in their lives as we shift out of this. So just keeping in mind and being curious about people, about people's experience. All right, one more tool we're going to use is just being able to slow down enough to check in with your inner wisdom. And again, we'll ask that question, what is one step that would help me with my self-care or stress management? What have I been meaning to do? And again, just take that position, feet on the floor, hands relaxed on your legs, on your thighs. You can take a nice deep breath here. And what's one thing? What's one thing for me? Good. Okay, so let's talk about frameworks now. What are some helpful frameworks that we focus on, that our patients and friends are using now? And here's a picture on the left of White Eagle, and she's got an article that's so simple, but it talks about the choice between seeing this as a portal or a hole to fall into. So, I mean, that's just an example of the extreme sides we can be using. Do we see this as having potential positive changes or just doom, right? So those are some examples. There's a link in your resources to the article from White Eagle. But, you know, this is a time when different perspectives are just running around all over the place about what this means. Most people will admit, hey, we weren't headed in a great direction. And as we know in motivational interviewing and with habit change, change is hard. And here we're being, you know, under a little pressure, perhaps, and maybe that was needed. But what is the perspective you're holding? What are clients feeling about it? What is their perspective? And just knowing that is very influential on our stress management. So using that, and again, another framework is the importance of self-care right now, and White Eagle's article reiterates this. So let's look at this, and let's look at other helpful frameworks. One of the big things I teach is the 4 steps to de-stress, which is taking from the model, the transactional model of stress and coping. So again, part of just our tendency with stress is to avoid it at first. The first response maybe is, I think I'll watch a movie, or maybe it's time for some binge watching. And then with a little time, if we sleep on it, we wake up and we're like, all right, I'm going to take that first step now. And we feel a little more resourced. But with the 4 steps, just knowing that is helpful. One of the things we do is we start to lean in or take action about stress. So step 1, list everything that's on your stress plate right now. COVID's on there, but there's a lot of things that were on there before that might still be on there. There's ongoing stress that's on there. There's concerns about how COVID will impact others, right? So list it all. It's kind of like dumping it or downloading out of your brain. Step 2 is to take then one problem at a time and look at what you can and can't control about that. And on the worksheet, the left side's what you can't control. And there's a lot we can't control right now about COVID, right? And that would be emotion-focused coping. And then we'll look at what we can control, taking a walk each day, maybe not in the snow, but that's the stuff we can control. And if we want to feel more empowered, that's the side we'd focus on. And good fit coping is when the side it's on, or the type of stress, either we can control it or we can't, is a good match with what you're using to cope. So if I'm worrying about what I can't control, bad fit coping. If I'm trying to fix it for everybody or myself, bad fit coping. If I decide I'm going to take a bath every day, better fit, right? So, and then if I'm procrastinating on the side I can control, bad fit. If I decide to do a little bit each day on something that's hard to do, good fit coping, okay? Let me show you here an example of Kelly who's lost her job in COVID. And this is her list of what she can't control or change about the pandemic, right? So all that stuff's happening. Not only did she get laid off, but the kids are home, the husband's home. It's a worst time ever to look for a job, right? Future's uncertain. But then when she looks at what she can control, and she's had to define the problem for herself, right? Well, yes, that darn resume, right? Networking with old coworkers, diet and exercise, managing stress, reaching out for support, keeping busy is something that usually works for her. Looking at her skills, maybe going to the state resource of workforce.org. There's the possibility of asking for a loan to get through. Taking breaks each day, scheduling downtime, right? So that would be an example of her using step 2. Steps 3 and 4 would be where we either go into more problem-focused coping or more emotion-focused coping. And again, there's more details on this on the website, and also you'll get a worksheet and some different things in the resources we give. But the actions that we can take about problem focus, that's step 3, okay? And that's problem solving, making a plan, trying things out to see if they help. And then all that stress we can't control or change, that's where emotion focused coping is. So all of the stuff on the right side here would be good fits for that side. Creativity, let's not forget. Pets, having a movie break. You know how you come out of that more refreshed. That's really helpful stuff here. Working with thoughts is a key piece, and that's that perspective piece I mentioned. Watching that our thoughts aren't adding to it. So if you have a bad day and you're having some doom thoughts, there's an exercise that can help you manage that and bring that in a little bit, rein that in a little bit. All right, let's try another body-based tool here. And this is called the soft belly breath. Very simple. So first, just breathe into your nose and out your mouth. And just let your breath be as natural or normal as it is right now. And you just have to loosen your jaw to allow that breath to go out your mouth. And breathe in through your nose, or find a way, whatever is comfortable for you. Adjust if you need to. And then the idea with this is to breathe in when you're ready, saying in your mind soft, exhaling and saying belly. Letting your belly soften. Breathing in, saying soft to yourself, and exhaling, saying belly, and letting that belly relax. The idea is when the belly relaxes, everything else follows. And try a few rounds for yourself there. Again, these tools can be so simple and quick, but if they drop your stress just a few points, that's all you may need to come back to having a wider perspective and not feeling too burdened in the moment. All right, so let's look at a few more tools now. We've gotten through a lot, and we're just going to wrap up with some other ideas to throw by you. So again, taking your own temperature of your stress or anxiety level. If 10 is the high end, 1 is the low. If you're a 6 or above, that's where body-based tools may be most effective. The mental tools, not as much when your stress is at that higher end. So that's good to know. You can kind of tap in, check in with yourself and adjust your tools accordingly to your level. When it's lower, the mental tools can be a really useful thing. And again, all of these tools just build and add to your resilience. So here's some examples of body-based tools, including humming and chanting and singing, including the havening we did. Some of these things, again, we can't go to the gym, can't go to a dance class, but let's look into Zumba, yeah? Tapping is also called emotional freedom technique. There's a little intro to that in your resource list. And folds or folding, we all know maybe some of these yoga postures, even just standing and allowing yourself to fold over your body, to drop your head, bend your knees when you do that. Erin has also put a couple of working from home yoga YouTubes on the resource list. So those body-based tools can be a big help when the stress is high. And then the mental tools, again, working with the thoughts, step 4 of the 4 steps to de-stress, having a specific worry time. So that's where you might just say, I'm going to take 20 minutes and worry my head off, and then that's it. And then a worry comes up later, say, oh, got to wait till tomorrow's worry period. Also another mental tool, the best case, the worst case, the most likely. This can really help because thoughts are under the radar. They're just throwing out all the uh-oh thoughts. But when we take them out of the dark, often we see they're a little bit exaggerated here, okay? So we can name, what is the best case that might come of this? What is the worst case? What's most likely? Probably somewhere in the middle. And that's a lot more realistic usually and helpful than our sort of naturally, randomly roaming thoughts. And we have a tool, the 20 Tools for Anxiety by Emily Z. That's also in your resource list. So that, and she has a lot of great links to videos to show some of these. Other useful frameworks, and this comes from the Spanish language where they will say, tengo hambre, I have hunger, but I am not hunger. We say I'm hungry. We say I'm anxious, but we may want to think I have this right now because emotions pass, hunger passes, right? Growth periods. So these are corridors of change that are inviting in the next level for us. Remembering active and passive coping. Active is when we're leaning into it, when we decide, all right, you know, I'm going to stop avoiding this and deal with it. I'm going to take a half hour and do some of these tools. What we know is even if we're repressing or avoiding, our brain knows something's going on. So it's not super effective in the end. So, you know, watching what works for you, trying some, you know, watching passive maybe have been the perfect cure one evening, right? The perfect thing. But we all need to usually increase our muscles about active coping and train ourselves around stress management. Some other things that are useful, good shortcuts would be regular de-stressing, regular meditation, regular yoga. It's not as important how long you go as how consistent you are in the day-to-day. Exercise is huge. Did you know that a lot of times stress and anxiety are chemically based? So cortisol is a hormone. When we sweat and cry, we actually release it. That saltiness is a little bit of cortisol flavoring. So that can be good to know. And again, the importance of nonverbal is huge. So journaling, also the 5-minute journal, that looks at just a very quick writing period of saying, what am I grateful for? Listing that, what would make today great? maybe taking a few steps on that resume. What are some affirmations? So I am, and fill in the blank with something positive about yourself or what you're up to. Humor, of course, we can take the posture of the stress ball. What does stress and anxiety do to us? And what would be the opposite? Oh my goodness, just stretching my arms to the side is a whole different mind space, right? Emotions, as we said, they get a bad rap, the bad emotions, but actually all emotions are part of our life force energy. And we don't want to just be stoic and just focus on the stuff we can control. That would be cutting out half of life, right? Certainty rituals, meaningful rituals that center us, calm us down. So at the end of the workday, working from home, cleaning up your desk or putting things away, and then just saying out loud, workday's done, I'm done, right? That is a type of one of those rituals that can be helpful. So we talked about the mental tool, the best case, worst case, most likely. I'll encourage you to go ahead and do that after we're done today and just see how that works. I love these written tools, and they do encourage you in the mental tools to write it down. It doesn't quite work if you're just thinking about it. It actually needs to get outside of your head onto the paper for you to get the most benefit and insight from it. And then there's a meditation using a symbol. Now this can be also very helpful for the nonverbal side, which is one of the biggest pieces of the brain that either is aligned and working for the changes we want to work on and progress in, or it can work against us. So if we have time, I'll show you this eagle meditation, but there are links in your resource list in case we don't run out of time with the questions. All right, that's everything. And just wrapping up, just know anxiety is a very normal emotional response. And self-care and stress management are needed. There's tools here, but we need to use them. We need to commit to making time for this. How you see things, the framework you hold, and this can change. This is not something that stays the same, but keeping in mind that that's a key piece of this. The body-based tools when we're having high anxiety, including the nonverbal side of the brain, active versus passive coping, and good fit versus bad fit coping, remembering the side we can and can't control. One of the big things on the worksheet is the serenity prayer, which is, all spirituality aside, if that's not part of it for you, but this is just a great stress management primer. Grant me the ability to accept the things I can't change, the courage to do the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. There it is right there. I could have just done that in this workshop, just said that. But anyway, it's about, we might call it building our muscles, building our stress management muscles, building our resiliency. So let's take some questions now, and then we will see if we have time for the eagle meditation, and if not, you will also have that in your resource list. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, and I just wanted to say in terms of helpful things for clients that you can make a little toolkit for your clients. There's so many good things going out there on the internet. So you can put these things together, just review them, make sure you review them yourselves. You can create guided meditations and relaxations for them. They may want to make them themselves with their own voices. That can be super powerful. So looking at that, that may be a way to create some resources for your clients. All right, and then I'm looking for Erin here. Let me
Yep, hi. So please, if you have any questions at this time, type them in the Q&A. We did get one during the presentation, Denise. We were wondering if you could expand on the RAIN acronym, specifically what the N stands for, the last bit of that acronym. Could you talk about that a little more?
Sure. and that is for not identifying with it. So that means to be saying, instead of I'm anxious, to say I have anxiety or I'm experiencing anxiety. But a lot of times with emotions, it tends to take over. They can tend to take over if we're in that high stress zone with them. So part of that rein would be to just get a little bit of neutrality or distance to say, hey, I have this. That's not all of me. And again, that emotional mindfulness worksheet will be in your resources too. There's a couple of different things with emotions. It's kind of a new area to be allowing of them. And I'm going to send, there's a Rumi poem that talks about this, where emotions are seen as helpful, even if they're negative. So that is, it may be a new area for us, but that's part of what that N means. Oops.
Thank you. Here's another one for you.
Sure.
How do you balance staying informed and connected with the stress and anxiety that comes with the news and social media?
That is such a great question. Thank you. And you know, that's one of the things we know is too much news is not helpful, but staying informed is important. But I know early on, I was watching all the numbers and the stats and the situations unfolding. And at one point, and this was pretty early on, I just said, you know, how much more do I need to know about the numbers? I kind of get it. This is bad. You know, we really need to stay home, et cetera. You know, there's different conclusions I could take from that news to inform my actions. So, but you know, and some of us can be science geeks or infectious control geeks, or you know, that can be part of it. We may love news, but one of the things that I think is something to watch is when your notifications are coming in all the time. And what we know about that is it's really easy to just be, you know, you want to know who's texted you. You want to know what that you know, what's going on. So that may throw us off a task, or you know, have that impact of causing more stress at times when it's not included in, like, this isn't a watching news time. So that's one thing I would say would be a good balancing, is to maybe have times that you're looking at news and really think about, what do I need to know right now? What are some good enough news sites I can bookmark and maybe go to at a certain point in the day? Who are the informed people I want to keep in touch with? I have some friends that just do a lot of news surfing. So if it's not as helpful for me to watch the news as much as they do, I can still talk with them and find out if there's anything I need to be informed of. Let me just think for a second if there's something else about that. You know, I think in general, when we're working on our stress management, we need to watch what is working and what isn't. So just noticing that for yourself. How was the news for me today? Was that helpful? Do I feel like that information was helpful? I think the other piece is there's so much about the news that we can't control. So maybe having a practice you do afterwards, whether it's prayer or something that's a stress reduction technique, or visualizing positive things for people who are suffering, that can be a way you feel like you have more of a positive impact, or you have more more of a way to participate and be contributing towards the areas that you're watching or learning about.
Thank you.
Sure, that was a great
Great
question.
thoughts. Yeah. Well, I don't have any other ones coming in. Let's just give it one more moment if people have any other questions. I've got Denise here, and then if we don't get any, we can move on to the final piece.
That sounds good, and I'll see if there's anything I missed of the billions of notes I took.
Okay, we got a few more for you.
Okay.
Okay. How do you find the balance with the fact that we are feeling out of control with our personal freedom right now?
And personal freedom, I'm going to guess, well, I'll give you an example. As I had planned a camping trip next week, guess what? That ain't happening. So a lot of people are feeling stir crazy, staying at home, all the restrictions. I'm guessing that's what you mean about not having the personal freedom you're used to. The other thing this brings to mind is just all the things that we would do that we wouldn't even realize we loved. I loved going to cafes. I did work in cafes. Uh, the library. Oh, my love affair at the library has ended prematurely, or whatever, is on extended hiatus. So just, that's where I had to use the what I miss list. So the one side is listing all the things you miss, and then what are 3 alternatives? Not perfect, but that may help with that need. Maybe some of it is being with your friends. So a lot of people are doing Zoom meetings or Zoom happy hours. Um, you know, I also encourage you to think of kind of a little bit wacky ideas, because that one, in terms of the step 3 problem solving of the 4 steps, when you think of something silly, it usually opens up your brain to think of something else that's actually really good, a really good option. So maybe thinking of it in that brainstorming way about the freedoms you're really missing. The piece about not being in control, just to notice, a lot of us have a serious need to be in control. And we don't have to use the word control freak or the term, but so when stuff like this happens, it's really jarring if that's your style. And that style tends to have a lot of anxiety. So considering this a training in how to just be more aware of when that's kicking in, what can you do to just lower your stress? What can you do to be gentle with yourself? Oh, there's my desire to control. Ah, thank you, thank you. It's kept me afloat for so long, appreciating it, but being able to switch gears. You can either do some action, so that may be like decluttering or distracting yourself, or, doing some passive coping. But that's hopefully, this is what is the key now about good stress management, is working with what we can and can't control. And how long the stay-at-home order goes on, what the impact of Corona will be in the long term and short term, any situations you're dealing with in your life because of this, all of that's out of our control.
Thank you. And here's a good one from the motivational interviewing perspective. How do you try not to fix it? I'm guessing the situation or a situation with your friend, or yeah, how do you try not to fix it?
How do you stop the writing reflex? Writing reflex. I think, that is another thing we need to practice. And we're not going to be perfect at that. And some clients actually will ask us, what should I do? Will ask us. And that's perfectly fine to answer that or to brainstorm together, but the writing reflex, basically, when it's not working well, it's usurping their own wisdom. It's undercutting their knowledge and ideas. It's jumping in too soon before they have a chance to develop their muscles and their strength about a situation. So that's part of why we would make sure to reflect first if we're using MI, making sure we understand exactly their situation, being curious, being open, trusting. This is the thing about the writing reflex, is you don't trust they can do it themselves. But if we're using that MI spirit, we're basically saying, hi, I'm here with you, and we're looking at this tough situation, and I know you have what it takes. You have some ideas. What have you thought about already about this? I've had to, just in terms of advancing my MI skills, just kind of make notes and reminders to myself. sometimes in the session, you can even say, oh, wait, I'm jumping in too soon. Let me first ask you, what are your ideas? So those are some thoughts on that, but definitely the Patient Navigator Training Collaborative has wonderful MI courses, and they're all getting upgraded a bit as we switch to online formats, so check that out. MI just takes a lot of practice. So noticing the writing reflex even after the fact, and then thinking back on your sessions to say, what might have I done instead there? It's an ongoing practice. Good question, though.
And one more here. What are some ideas? How do you celebrate positive and happy events during the stay-at-home orders?
Well, that's a great question to end with. So, we don't want to dismiss or be sort of all namby-pamby or Pollyanna about the gravity of this situation. And usually when we're in these kind of pressure cookers of change, or what they call growth corridors, we're not real happy about it. But I also wanted to note, again, some people may be doing well or may have things to celebrate now. I really feel for example, seniors in high school now that aren't getting to have their graduations or their proms. But again, this is where we may need to think creatively. So any way you can celebrate. Basically, all of this is saying, throw whatever you need to at it to help. Anything that can help. This may be a great discussion for your Zoom happy hour. Hey, you guys, I need to celebrate this. Do you have any ideas? I just don't want this to go by. And yes, maybe in the fall we'll have a prom or a graduation, or we'll try this, but it might not be the same as what I'm feeling now. And if I could take some time to celebrate it. I've, in terms of this camping trip I'm not going on, I've had to think of what might be ways to give myself a little rest time, and just remembering something as simple as resting. It doesn't seem to be something that all the firecrackers are going off, but it might be like simplifying to just having a day off with a good book, or getting some help with childcare so that you can have a couple of hours to do whatever you think of. Anything else with celebrating is just making sure you are acknowledging yourself. Oftentimes, part of the challenge with my coaching clients is they're already on to the next thing before they've properly celebrated the achievement they have made. So I could go on and on about this, but hopefully that gives you some ideas. And just making room for people, that there might be some people thriving right now, right? There may be some people getting a lot done, getting to projects that were on hold for years and years. That, there's all stuff to celebrate here. All of the environmental improvements that are going on, being able to see the sky in Kathmandu. This is a picture from Nepal. They can see in one of the lakes that was kind of smoky where we are at the lakeside, they can see the mountains now. In India, there's this huge view of the Himalayas that was not possible. So these are things to celebrate, and we're going to find that amidst the adversity. So I think we'll...
we do have one more. I know we're at time, but if you have a moment, we could do the last one.
Sure.
So people are welcome to stay on. We just have one more question. So there are many heightened emotions and judgments from others. How can we practice compassion for others who may be acting out of character, such as anger, being snappy, etc.?
Cranky. Who's got some more crankiness right now? Me. Yes. So that is a great point. And, we all in our Patient Navigator training collaborative, whether teachers or students or part of the crew, diversity is huge. And just acknowledging that people are going to have all different kinds of feelings, realities, impacts. perspectives, right? And we may not be at our best. One of the articles I was just reading was just permission to have a bad day. The productivity people, and this is in your resource list, the productiveflourishing.com. They have a whole list of COVID resources. But the productivity person was saying, how many new projects have been dumped on your plate that you didn't have on your list of things to do because of COVID, right? So that, and again, as we know, this is a stress pressure cooker. The other person on that team, it's a husband-wife team, she looks at all the self-care pieces, and her instructions, or at least this article, was on permission to have a bad day. We need to lower our expectations for ourselves, and we need to increase our tolerance. I mean, this is the ideal. If we're cranky, we're not going to be maybe in the best place to do this, but that's where we can come back and say, I'm sorry, it wasn't myself the other day. A big MI skill for when someone is throwing discord or resistance at us is just to reflect. Wow, that makes you really angry. Very simple. And then they go on, and just being heard and acknowledged and giving them the chance to vent. If this is, say, a friend or patient, they may appreciate that and be able to kind of drop their stress a few points to say, this is just so hard. And so making room for others, compassion for others and everyone. This is a stress corridor that is unlike anything any of us likely have experienced, or if there's, you know what I mean there. But yes, knowing these are times when people can not be at their best. And a lot of times too, there's what's on top of what they're throwing at us, but we may be able to feel into what's underneath it. If people are frustrated and anxious and depressed, often it's about, I don't know what to do, or I don't know what this is going to look like. That fear is normal. But we can, part of the point of this workshop is we do have the ability, as do they, to gain control or to rein in some of those sort of out of control feelings and emotions, and use the tools to, even if we just come down a few points in our stress level, that can be huge in terms of how we're appearing and interacting with others and with ourselves.
All right, well, thank you so much, Denise. Any parting thoughts before we conclude?
As long as we've gone a little over, could I just take a few minutes for the eagle meditation just to show that?
Sure. So anyone is welcome to stay. I'll just give my last reminders. Please, once you exit out of Zoom, there'll be an evaluation that pops up. It should just take you a minute. We really appreciate your thoughts and feedback. And then I will send a follow-up email with all the resources Denise mentioned. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. And if you can stay for a meditation, we'd love to continue.
Thanks so much, everyone. And this is just an example, again, another example of a nonverbal tool, but also a mental tool, perhaps, using a symbol from nature. So the eagle, you can imagine just thinking, what are some qualities the eagle has that we might find useful right now? So I'm going to lead us through this. The first part is a great way to release stress. And I'm going to ask you to come up with a symbol for releasing, whether it's an ocean wave, going back to the ocean and sucking out all your stress with it, or whether it's a lazy river and you just get to exhale your stress. And just like leaves and sticks, your stress is just floating downstream. There can be a drain, a water drain, or a waterfall, but pick a symbol for releasing. And see that in your mind's eye as you just take some deep breaths. And see the picture of the release as you exhale long. That wave in the ocean maybe. Take a nice deep breath again. And just allow any accumulated stress or anything you don't need to just be exhaled down that lazy river or that waterfall. Letting it go. One more nice, deep, and long breath. Good. And again, you're sitting with your feet on the floor, your hands on your lap. You can close your eyes. And now we're going to bring in eagle. So on your inhale, breathe in the way that eagle just has such a high level of vision. So inhale that. Hold your breath at the top of your inhale. And exhale, still using that releasing image for stress to go and be released. And then we'll do a similar in-breath where we hold it at the top. But the next quality is eagle's ability to survive. So just breathe that in. Nice big breath and hold. And just see eagle in your mind's eye, just that incredible instinct for survival. And releasing breath. We're just going to do a couple more qualities. And now inhale that ability of eagle to have clear priorities. Holding, just knows what needs to get done in the day. And exhaling and releasing, seeing that releasing image once again for anything that's ready to be released. And one more in-breath for eagle's ability to take care of itself and its family. Breathing it in. Seeing the beautiful eagle, the symbol in your mind's eye, and exhaling and releasing into that image for release. And the final quality is just inhaling how eagle is able to rest in the winds of change. It can just glide on those warm currents, not using too much effort. And then exhaling. So this is a way to use symbols to help your brain have something to align with and some useful metaphors to focus on. And for people who have a hard time meditating, this can sometimes be a helpful way and a more active way to meditate or do relaxation tools. All right. Thank you guys for trying that out.
All right, I'm so relaxed that
So relaxed, we're like, okay, where are we? Oh.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Denise. We really appreciate your time, and everyone who stayed on, have a wonderful rest of your day, and watch for that follow-up email.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Erin. Bye-bye.